My name is Rose Cabat, and my age is 99 3/4. My mother was from Lithuania, on the border of Russia, but she was from Vilnius, near Vilnius, which is Lithuania. My father was from Warsaw, and they met in New York. They were New Yorkers, and I was born in the Bronx. My mother spoke English. She spoke Yiddish, English. So, but my sister always spoke to my mother in English, but I always spoke to my mother in Yiddish, which is a German kind of accent. Now, I didn't speak English at all until I started school. We lived on a very nice street, was Henry Street, which was right near the Henry Street settlement, just a couple of houses over. And we always had these peddlers who would come around with these baby carriages with beans in them. They call them arbus and bubbus, which was garbanzos and those big red beans. And we had block parties, you know, and people sat on the fire escapes to watch it. You sat on the fire escape, you put the pillows out on the fire escape and watched the goings on down below. And also we used to go on trips. We were the Henry Street Settlement Girls. We used to sing, "We are the girls of Henry Street, you hear so much about." Whenever we go out, I forget the name, how to sing it anymore. And then they would take us to all the fancy places in New Jersey and so on by bus. So all the higher-ups, the people who were rich, could see all the poor people and give us gifts. Then when we moved to the Bronx, that's when I went to the high school. I went to Walton High School. It was all-girls school. I went to an all-girls school. There was a boys and girls school near me, but I went from an all-girls grade school to an all-girls high school. So I never went to a mixed group school. Well, I met my husband in the Bronx. When I moved to the Bronx, we were teenagers. I was about 12 or 13, and so was he. We were the same age. And I never did like him when he was young, real young, because he was too obnoxious. He stayed obnoxious all his life. He was very handsome. He really was. He had real wavy hair, and he was really good looking. But as I said, he was obnoxious, so I never let him into my house, but what he would do would come up and ring the doorbell constantly to let him in. And if I wouldn't let him in with the rest of the group of my friends in the neighborhood, he would go up on the roof, drop down onto the fire escape, and come in through the window. That's how obnoxious he was. But he was an artist right from the beginning. Even when he was in grade school, he used to win prizes. He was the artist. And we draw on the sidewalks with chalk. And he was so obnoxious, he'd come over and draw right over your stuff and say, "No, it should be this way." And that's the way he was. But he just kept coming around, and my mother said, "Why does he come around so early in the morning?" So, to our concourse area. But then he just kept on going, and he said, "Oh, you don't want to go with Larry. He only kisses you on the forehead." I got married in 1936. And then I got married again in 1937. See, I got married in in court with my mother not knowing. And then when she found out and had a fit about it, because, you know, what would her neighbors say if anything happened, if I became pregnant? So we got married in Jewish in 37. So we were married twice, once October 17th, and the next time January 25th. He changed his name from Cabat, K-A-B-A-T, to C-A-B-A-T because his mentor said you're never going to get a job with a K-A-B-A-T because they weren't hiring Jews and Italians. We moved down to the Greenwich Village and used boxes, orange crates for furniture. But every time he came by me, he would pat me on the head or give me a kiss on the head or something like that. He's very romantic. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. And that's the truth. World War II, I came out to Tucson. I was here in 1942. He shipped me off to Tucson on the Golden State, and we rode for 5 days on the Golden State till we got to Tucson. And this woman, Mrs. Rancia, whom he found out took in boarders, she took in flyboys and people like that for so much per week and shipped us off to her, and she picked us up, and that's where we stayed, my son and I. And I got a job at Davis Mountain as Rosie the Riveter. One of the other gal who lived at Mrs. Rancia's, Alice, she was my bucking partner. She was small, and I couldn't get into the struts, in the back of the struts, to put patches on them. So I would do the riveting, and she would have the bucking bar and back in the struts, so I could buck a patch over a hole. See, we patched up holes that were made by the Germans. When we were in kindergarten, they would give us clay, and we would roll it out and make bowls and things. So that's how I got started with. I knew about clay. I knew how to roll out clay and put it on a piece of clay that you pounded down and make a bowl and things like that. When I was, 5, 6 years old. I did coiled pots. Never did pinch pots, but I did coiled pots. And I had Lillian Wald for my kindergarten teacher. And she was well known at that time with women's groups and things. But she was my kindergarten teacher. My husband apprenticed himself to, that's her name, what's her name? Valley Wiesel there. He used to be her gopher. So she gave him clay, so he wanted to make plates so he can put his designs on plates. And so he brings the clay home, and he had the clay home and left it home while he was doing freelance artwork. I made some pots with it, and he thought I was a genius because there was pots. So he said, oh, you have to follow that up, because he thought it was wonderful that I was making these pots and these heads and all these things with the clay that he brought home. So he got a membership down at the Greenwich Village, at Greenwich House. And they had a big old kick wheel up there on a wooden platform. And I thought, gee, I'll teach myself how to throw on the wheel, and I did. The feeling started after I did the glaze calculation course. I figured out there was one that looked very promising to me. And so we worked on it, and I taught it to my husband, and we both worked on it, and we kept working on it until we got it this silky smooth thing. I guess I had a feel for it, my fingers. When it came to the tiny little ones, I use a dental tool to hold the neck. I love the feel of it. I still love the feel of it. Yeah, they're still feelies to me. I feel the feel of it, and my glazes make them special. I think anybody could throw a pot. Anybody who has a knack for throwing can throw a pot. But not everybody can make a beautiful glaze like my beautiful glazes. When I started doing stoneware, that's when I started embellishing. But not when the clay was smooth. I didn't like to embellish it. I liked it to be slick. If it's a bulgy shape, I don't think it looks good with a slick glaze. It looks better with a homey glaze. But when it comes up slick and beautiful, I think it needs a slick glaze. So that's how I decide. I have no schedule anymore. When I feel like it, I go out and make pots. But if I don't feel like it, I don't. I used to go out every morning, but I don't anymore. You know, at my age, it's pretty hard to get around. So it's only when I feel like it. I never was in with potters, or even later on with the modern potters, although I did know Volkas and I did know Soldner. When we were married, we used to go to Los Angeles and go to the Otis Art Institute and meet them and talk to them and all that sort of thing. The museum wasn't a museum then, it was just an art center. And we had a wonderful, cozy group. Maurice and Elsie Waite and Berta Wright, and we had a whole group of us who used to work down there. So I was friends with Solari and with Soldner and with a whole bunch of people. That I don't push myself. That's what I'd like to be remembered. I don't like to think that I'm pushing myself on to people or anything like that. I'm very happy with whatever I did. And I'd like it to go on the way it is.